So, hey, we're happy to have Mr. David Driggers with us, I believe the founder of Cirrascale, and looking forward to a conversation that we can share with some of our broadband provider customers that have been working with GDT. Because I think what you guys are doing, Dave, has some applicability. But if you can maybe just give us a little bit of the background on Cirrascale. A lot of the neoclouds, have only been around a year or two. I think you guys are quite different.
Yeah, I mean, therein lies part of the problem with us being called a neocloud. Neo means new, and we're not new. We come from a deep, deep history of hardware. I mean, we were a pure hardware play until about 8 years ago. We sold our hardware business off and then moved into pure cloud as our primary offering. We designed and built the world's first HGPU server in 2012 to give you an idea of how heavy we are into hardware and how long we've been doing this. So we're pretty excited about what's happening in the marketplace. AI is blowing up like crazy, and with agentic AI, it's starting to really touch the users and across the board, especially within enterprise.
And now we see that there's some momentum around inferencing, sort of that next chapter of what's coming.
Yeah,
How
it's
do you think
definitely
of, yeah.
Yeah, it's different. We've transitioned our business to being more activity on inference than it is on training. I mean, well, it's 60+% is now inference versus training. So it's happening, and it's happening pretty quickly.
And in your mind, as we move towards more and more inferencing, how does that translate to requirements from network availability? Why is that different from learning?
Well, especially as enterprise. I mean, the key here is as enterprises start doing their own inferencing, the latency and privacy are going to be, at the forefront. They're not going to want. We've heard from many of them out there that are doing testing using the big boys, using Microsoft, using OpenAI, using these, that they're really in a proof of concept stage, that ultimately they want these, I shouldn't say models, really, they want these activities closer to them so they can be private. First there was a worry about giving your data and the data being used for training. Now they're starting to realize with these latest models where they're doing programming, or they're asking it very private information, they're putting in their own information. The prompts themselves are actually not secure, and they're now worried about the users putting their prompts into the public cloud, and then that being used, either the inputs or the outputs. So trying to get to a trusted environment where it's effectively private is what a lot of these guys want. And one of the main way they're going to do that is they're going to put it near the users and near where their data is actually at.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting. And Jason Weber being a long time broadband operator yourself and now part of GDT. When we think about security, we think about private networks, we think about high capacity networks. Again, keep me honest, but it seems like something in there is relevant to our broadband provider customers.
Yeah, so the service providers themselves, and I came from a business service provider background, the B2B guys, before we were talking about AI, they had private line needs. They were doing private lines over MPLS between sites. They were doing layer 3 VPN between sites. And then the service provider itself is set up perfectly with fiber to these business parks or enterprise customers, where if you do have a latency requirement or an SLA requirement in service provider speak, you can actually fulfill that with the service provider because they have the fiber plant, they have the construction done to these enterprise customers overall, and they can do the private line down to a DWDM wave and a dark fiber if necessary and the opportunity is right, to where Cirrascale could be in the SP environment, in the COs that they have today. And then we have this latency challenge solved because the service provider is got the direct fiber path to the business park or the enterprise customer.
Absolutely. And that absolutely aligns with what we believe, why we believe telcos are going to be that last let's say the last mile providers for enterprises that are, if you have multiple locations and you want to keep these models private, you need to be on a layer two connection or one that and often you may already have these connections between your sites. So we absolutely expect that telco is going to be one of the main ways that these enterprises adopt private AI.
Yep.
So does,
I'm sorry, Jim. I was just moving one more point here. The workload itself, whether it's private AI or whatever, we're still going over dark fiber and the speed of light applies. So the number of network ports you got to go through and the speed of light, that's still a thing, right? So if you can bring the content closer to the end user, latency comes down and the experience is better, and there's not going to be packet loss because we have an SLA that comes with the offering.
Absolutely. I mean, that's for enterprises to adopt AI and put critical workloads on an AI. They can't have it go down. They can't have the latency if it's a, because realize there's three different types of inferencing. You've got real time, which truly, if you're using it to operate a robot, for instance, real time is super important. You don't want that robot stopping or running somebody over, because they're not in a real time type situation. Then you've got near time, where maybe it's a chat bot, maybe it's a support, being leveraged for a support AI. You don't have to be real time, but you still need to be near time. That latency is still going to be important. But now you can centralize the compute and then broadcast, distribute it over a wider area or a wider region. But you're still going to want that guaranteed throughput, that guaranteed latency, even if it is between Florida and New York. You're still going to want the guarantee of latency if it is a business application. And then finally is batch, and batch you don't care as much about, but that allows you still to use those assets from a much farther distance to get the availability, the usability up. So because the key to keeping your cost down is being able to keep that equipment busy.
so Dave, a lot of our customers are regional versions of a Charter or a Verizon.
Mm-hmm.
So they're smaller footprints. They have they have deeper customer intimacy within the markets they serve. And if they're interested in, dipping their toe in the water, I think some of them may wrestle with, well, how do I even take some initial steps? Do you have any thoughts of that from a
Yeah.
Cirrascale perspective, how you guys can help?
Absolutely. So we have basically what we would call a starter kit. And let me point out one of the other big differences between us and a neocloud. We've been doing this for a long time, and we provide end-to-end solutions. So we actually architect. We're not just providing a GPU by the hour. We actually architect the entire solution. So the servers, the storage, the networking, user access, security profiles, top to bottom, as well as working with the service, as well as working, now we'll take it the other side, the actual application service providers who are bringing, like RingCentral, for instance, is bringing their products into a cloud-friendly type scenario, and they don't want to operate the equipment. The telcos don't want to operate the equipment. That's where we come in. We work with companies like RingCentral to do the full architecture to make sure the system matches what the application need is. But then we provide all the services to the telco. So the telco is just being the network provider. We'll even help them with what network requirements they are to have primaries, secondaries, fallbacks, because again, we do handle that entire stack, both the DevOps and the infra ops, and then deliver a complete solution. We, as I mentioned, we do have what we consider to be a starter pack. That's enough hardware, that's enough networking to handle quite a few of the different models that are available today. So somebody can take a small bite rather than, taking the whole thing down.
Perfect. So I'm probably oversimplifying it, but it sounds like you guys have a true solution developed that you can deploy so the customers, so the broadband providers don't need to figure it out themselves. You guys deliver the entire solution. It would leverage the space and power available in the head ends or central offices of the broadband providers. So you guys provide a quick way for them to have a capability that they can start piloting from a go-to-market standpoint.
Yeah, and we've dealt with telcos before. Again, we're not new, so we understand the limitations of COs. And the good news here is this is inference. And so we've taken, which is radically different than training. Most people think when they think GPUs, they think these type of scenarios that the wattage is going to be absolutely crazy, that they're not going to be able to do anything. They in this case, we've actually taken into account that these are going into COs. So we've architected the solution so it'll fit in the 7 kilowatt, 14 kilowatt, lower wattage profiles. And they also can be spread, across racks. It's not like you have to have one super powerful rack. Inferences is a situation where we can work within the space that we have.
Okay.
And when we say space, we mean space and power.
Yep, absolutely. Jason, when you think of our customers and sort of their perspectives, are there any questions that come to mind that you'd like to bring to Dave?
Well, I can think of one that I would have. So if you're co-located Cirrascale and you're bringing a private line to the network private line to the Cirrascale site, that's a revenue opportunity also for the service provider, is it not? Because they would need to provide backhaul for B2B to the data center where Cirrascale actually resides. So I think they would have an upsell opportunity to their existing their customers. Would you not? Would you disagree with that?
No, and one thing I want to be really clear about, we don't look at in internetworking or networking as a profit center. So from our standpoint, uh, if we're the end customer and we're passing it, or if we're the if if we have end customers who need private lines, we don't upsell them. We provide the line at cost plus 10%. So it's not a profit center for us. We want our network providers to make their profit. So we don't sit there and beat people up on pricing for those types of things. Same thing with power in a data center. We don't look, that's not a profit center for us. Our profit really is in the managed services. If we're selling the hardware if the telco wants to own the hardware or our customers want to own the hardware, we look at that the exact same way as well. We sell it at about 12%, which is really just covers our cost of servicing and warranting the equipment. We make our money on the managed services piece. We don't make it on the hardware or the connectivity.
Dave, if you put your hat on and pretend you're the CEO of a regional broadband provider, maybe you're a legacy cable operator, so you've got HFC plants, you've got head ends out there, you're building more and more fiber capacity, across a couple of states. And it sounds like we could take a Cirrascale solution, put it in some of our head ends. If you're the CEO, you could put it into some of your head ends. And then how would you think about going to market with that? Would you go back to your existing enterprise accounts? Would you go to universities that are in the area, healthcare, research companies that might be looking at inferencing capabilities? How would you think about the go-to-market side?
So the answer there is yes. Because what's happening, if we just start with R1s, major research institutions, this AI is moving so quickly that their data centers aren't ready to take this type of capacity. It's simple as that. And therefore, we're building out sites that are near the R1s to be able to offload that AI to us. And they're going to need a lot of connectivity, especially the R1s that are heavily distributed. Like right now, we're working with a large Texas university that happens to have 12 sites. They've got their main campus, but they also have all these sub sites that are going to be part of these inference initiatives that have to have significant amounts of connectivity. And the connectivity itself, depending upon the application, might be wide. It might actually need to be pretty big pipes. But in general, it's going to be assisting in adding more usage into pipes that are already pre-existing. That then you just get to better monetize those big pipes because you're adding to it. The usage is being added in.
Yeah. One last thought I have is, 3 to 5 years ago, there was a lot of hype around 5G and everything was going to drive all these new, use cases and apps were going to need to be way out, pushed out to the edge. And some folks way forward invested in that. And a lot of that didn't materialize. And, it feels like inferencing is different. It feels like the demands are much more stringent. It feels like
Well,
it's
yeah,
coming a lot
well,
faster. It feels
realize,
like,
and it's happening right now, especially because of agentic AI. Once you have an agent, you're always connected and you're always working because your little agent sitting there and assisting you. You're not the one typing and banging away on your mobile phone. Your agent's on your mobile phone connecting and getting things done for you. It's this agent called OpenClaw is
Mhm.
actually the fastest growing application in history. So we keep thinking it can't be a fast one. Oh, Facebook was this fast. Oh, TikTok was this fast. OpenAI with ChatGPT was this fast. This surpassed all that. So agents are being adopted like crazy, and they're always going to be connected. They're always going to be using that connectivity, and they're going to, in order it's going to transform how we use our phones. So this is going to push on your 5G, and is going to push on how do I get the data? How do I keep things local now?
Okay. Next time we do this kind of a call, we need to drop like a lobster claw or something in there. Lobster thing. Jason, you had something?
Yeah, Jim, I wanted to piggyback on your question about the CEO of the service provider. So let's just take the agentic AI opportunities. What do you think are the top 5 enterprise customer types that would be most likely to adopt agentic AI? I'm thinking like healthcare. You mentioned schools, regional education centers, uh, industrial centers, that type of
So
stuff.
research, so anybody who's doing research and doing programming, so if you've got a significant amount of programming or you're doing research, these agents realize they don't go to sleep at night. It's like having a personal assistant or having lots of personal assistants, frankly. If you got a really complex job you're doing and you can have an assistant that doesn't sleep, that when you wake up, it's finished the work that you told it to do in the middle of before you left from work. Anybody who leverages assistance or needs assistance, so like in research, it's no brainer there because it takes a lot of time to actually go and look up stuff, to figure out what are you trying to build. You put that task on your agent, and your agent does it. So within research, we're already seeing significant gains. We were at a university event the other day, and one of the big presentations was, in order for us to write this paper, it would normally take 7 to 8 months. It would span an entire school season to get a paper done. Now it's being done within weeks because the agents are doing the sub work. They're doing all the grunt work that researcher has to do in order to document their paper, in order to document their work, even going out and finding out, has this experiment been done that I'm thinking about doing, and was it successful or not? If it wasn't, good, I don't have to do it. If it was, I just have to pick up the answer from where that one left off and go to the next experiment. So having agents in research workflows is an absolute no-brainer. The other big area we were talking to an enterprise here in San Diego, and he says, "Well, how do you think I could use it?" And I go, "Let me talk to you about what is your worst. What do you have the most employee turnover in, and why?" I said, "In most companies, it's support, either internal or external support." And he goes, "Absolutely." He goes, "I got 70 people in support, and 40%, I have a 40% turnover rate. And it's because they're frustrated with the job. It's hard to get them up level." And I said, that's the main places you want to probably target for bringing in AI to help those people, not replace them, but help to train them, help to make it where they can answer questions that they've never heard before faster, and just up level them. And he's like, well, if they were better, I could probably even cut the number of staff, and the ones that are being turned over, I don't have to have that churn either. I said, there you go. That's the space you should be looking for, is where you can bring in an AI, not to replace, but to support your workers and make them better.
What about healthcare? I read about an instance where an agent would help a doctor or a hospital system with patient care as an assistant. Is that a use case you've heard of too? Or
Oh, absolutely. And again, it's not to replace a doctor or replace a nurse. It's to augment them. It's to get and again, it's really doing the grunt work. It's doing the year one, year two type of stuff where you're really broad and wide and you're versus when you start to get into the year three, year four, year five, where you're seasoned. This allows those year one and year two people to already start off at like that year three capability.
Okay. So again, I want to try to crystallize this for our customers. So I'm a regional broadband provider. I've got a whole commercial services org. We sell private line circuits to regional healthcare systems, regional banks, the school systems. And if I was to take a Cirrascale stack and put it in some of my head ends out there on the edge, close to those locations, you know, it feels like I'm going back now to those customers and saying, hey, you already take your services from me as a broadband provider. You trust me, we're local, your data is going to be secure, there's data sovereignty. We now have a stack available to you where you can start running inferencing workloads without having to build it all out yourself, without having to figure out how to do that all. We, as your service provider, can be the easy button for you to start
Absolutely.
piloting what you want to do with inferencing and AI. Is that the pitch?
Right. Absolutely. You've already got the network connectivity. You're already a trusted partner. And this is just bringing a private AI where it's in your control. It's truly private. And you can distribute that AI to all your, campus locations. You can distribute that to all your retail locations. I can tell you, especially, you're going to see this come up quite a bit uh, uh, in fast food. Fast food is going to be one of the wider adopters of these. And if you've ever been in a fast food place, there's no room. There's no telco closet there that can hold an AI stack. They're going to have to rely upon the people they're already working with that are already providing those private lines. And that's the telcos. That's the cable service providers. That's the people who are already bringing that connectivity into a fast food location. As those guys start adopting these types of AI agents to take orders, these AI agents to keep track, these AI models to keep track of their users and try to speed up that breakfast and lunch and dinner rush. They don't have a place to store all that stuff. So the edge is going to have to be tightly connected because they're very latency sensitive. You don't want to wait. If they lose 10 seconds per customer in line, that goes the wrong way. They've got to save 10 seconds because if they can save 10 seconds, that's going to move up the amount of people that they can handle. And the main providers to those retail type scenarios where they're using AI to accelerate the user, getting users through, getting their customers through the line faster. It's going to be through telco. It's going to be through cable providers who are already providing that connectivity because they're not going to want to pay more. They're not going to want to have a new line come in. So these telco providers who have just pull off the top of my head, if you're providing connectivity to 100 jack-in-the-boxes, guess what? You're the ideal place to provide the AI to that 100 jack-in-the-boxes versus someplace else. Because that someplace else is going to increase the cost of the networking. It's already there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. And Jim, just to kind of talk about it the way I would talk about it as a service provider, we'd look at the map and we would say, here's our industrial parks, here's our healthcare, here's our fiber footprint. Let's take the CO where Cirrascale is and put it as close as possible to where our CO is closest to those entities that we're trying to put this solution into. So where fiber footprint wise does it make sense from our COs and our NFL size city or smaller? What's the one that's closest to the end customer? Put Cirrascale there, and then talk to the customer about the low latency they're going to get, because fiber mileage wise, we've closed the gap as close as possible, service provider to end customer.
That's the latency part. You have to also realize for enterprises in particular, if this is a business application, they're also going to want a DR site. So it won't even be as one deployment and one CO. It'll be one plus another one for DR for failover at a minimum. And the bigger the opportunity, it's going to be multiple locations. And those locations, the more locations we have, and the smaller they are, then if one goes offline, I only lose 10% of my capacity. Maybe things slow down just a little bit. So it's not even, for inferencing, we don't want one big site. We want sites that are distributed. Our software load balances across those sites, so when a customer won't even know they had an outage if it's been deployed correctly.
Right. Distributed it reduces the blast radius. You don't want AI blast radius happening to
Right.
take
Blast radius, it gives us better latency. I mean, this is why I truly believe that telcos and cable providers are going to be, they're going to be mission critical for a lot of these applications that are enterprise, where they're running, they have to run when business is open, they got to be running. And the worst thing that can happen to them is it stops. Again, if this is your support engine and it stops, that's not a good thing. So you want to make sure that your support is distributed.
Mhm.
All right. Well, fantastic. So, Dave, we appreciate you being here with us as the CEO of Cirrascale. As GDT, we're always looking for ideas that could move the needle for our broadband provider customers. And this feels like one of those things that could move the needle and be really exciting as far as how they're perceived in the market and getting in front of what is coming as a massive trend that they can leverage their fiber footprint, their head ends, their central offices, their available space and power, and their proximity to the enterprise customers that ultimately are going to be taking advantage of this new technology. So Dave, thanks for joining. Jason Weber, lead solution architect / delivery engineer for our service provider business. Dave, any final thoughts here before we wrap up?
It's an exciting time. And it's gonna, I mean, it's gonna happen, especially as the SaaS guys, as the software gets developed, as you have these different models are really tailored to the enterprise. This is gonna come and it's gonna come quickly. End of 2026, we expect to see enterprise really embracing this private AI scenario because they're going to see other competitors doing the same thing. And in order to keep up, they're going to have to do it.
Yeah.